はい、これはもう、この、インタビューの最後の方だと思いますけど、皆さん、第3章の中で、ご自身が行ったフィールド調査の時の発見とかトラブルについて、第3章の中でボックスとして書いてますけども、でそこにインドネシア、ベトナム、ケニアについてのボックスがありますが、簡単に、ご紹介いただけますか。まず、キーリさんから。インドネシアのフィールド調査。
了解しました。まず新しい発見というところなんですけど、やっぱりそのペーパー上で、政府が公表している政策であったり、ペーパー上でいくら何が書かれていても、やっぱり現場に行って見てみないとわからないっていうのが一番の発見ですね。で、具体的な例を挙げますと、例えばですけど、インドネシアにおいては、小水力発電の許可、実際に実証事業を行う際には14の許認可っていうのが必要になるって言われています。で、その中でも4つは中央政府、1つは州政府、9つは地方政府から取得しないといけないものです。ただ、これでうまく、許認可の区分けもできていて、きちんと取れるようになっています。で、それがきちんと取れるようにワンストップエージェンシーっていうのも作って、そこに事業会社が行けば、スムーズに事業が進めるっていうような手はずには、ペーパー上はなってるんですけど、実際に現地に行って事業所等にヒアリングをしていくと、全くそれが機能していないということも、多々見受けられて、政府間の間で、この許認可は地方政府、中央政府って決まってるはずのものが、どこかバラバラであったり、どっちかの意見が食い違っていたり、ということで、具体的な日本企業さんの名前は挙げれないんですけど、私がインタビューを行った企業では、そういったトラブルのせいで、開発が2年から6年に伸びたっていう事例があったりっていうこともあって、やっぱりそのペーパー上で書いてあることだけでは全くわからないことが現場に行くと出てくるっていうのは大いにあることだと思います。でハードルっていうところなんですけど、その現地調査のハードル一番途上国特にだとは思うんですけど、その話を聞きたい相手にたどり着くまでっていうのがやっぱり非常に大変ですね。例えばインドネシアのエネルギー省のこの方に会いたい、この方に話を聞きたいっていう際に、その方にたどり着くまでに、かなりの時間を要します。秘書さんを経由してすぐに行けるっていうわけではなくて、誰かから紹介していただいて、また繋いでいただいて、で、OK が得られたと思ったら、まだそれがダメになったり、っていうのの繰り返しで、ヤルナン先生とも一緒に、海外の調査と、いろいろ行ってきましたけど、やっぱりその調整っていうのがすごい大変です。なんで、どのようにやったらうまくいくのかっていうのはまだはっきりとした答えは出てないですけど、途上国っていうのは、本当にそのハイレベルになればなるほど、聞きたい相手に、アポイントメントを取ることっていうのが非常に難しいっていうのがハードルの一つですね。
はい。そうですね。私もよく経験してます。同じことです。はい。ハオさん、簡単にお願いできますか。
はい、ベトナムでその調査をしていて、新たな発見、新しく分かったことは、先ほどのちょっとお話しさせていただいた中でもご説明したのとつながるんですけれども、そのベトナムで農村域で調査を行っていると、その農業をやっている人々がどのように考えて行動しているのかというところが、最もその物事を動かしている重要なところだということに気づきました。実際に政府が制度とかあるいは規制とかを作って何かを変えようとしても、その対象となっているそこに住んでいる人々がそれに従わなければそれが実効性を持たないわけですし、例えばその稲わらの野焼きを 政府はそういったことはなるべくやめるようにという通達を出していても、その野焼きをするのが一番簡単に稲わらを除去する方法なので、それは知っているけれども、これが一番簡単なんだと言って、そこら中で毎年ある時期になると野焼きの煙が黙々と立ち上がっているという、そういう状況は変わらなくて、その農民が、これは利益になるなと、そういうものが提示できなければ、物事は変わらないんだなということを学びました。で、あとは難しかったのは、キーリーさん、あと柳先生、もうご存知の実際に調整をしてそこに行くと、調査をさせてもらうというのが、やはり何よりも入り口で大変だったなと。ベトナムの場合は今どうなるかこのコロナでどうなってるか分かりませんけれども、お酒を飲んで、その村の人たちと仲良くなるというのがかなり重要だったなと思っています。はい、以上です。
はい、まさにその通りですね。地元のステークホルダーが一番大事です。I would like to ask Charles Polico to share with us a little bit about his experiences during the field study trip in Kenya.
Yeah, it's been a great experience. I've been there 3 times.
Something that you learned that from your trip there, but you didn't know before going there, and also about some troubles or hurdles when you did the field study.
Right. So going to Kenya when I first arrived, you have this plan. I'm going to meet this person and that person and that person and that person. And then you get on the ground and you try to start, you try to put things in motion and get those meetings set up so you can have those interviews. And then you'll have all kinds of, situations come up. Oh, this person is not in the office today, or, they canceled the meeting last minute. So you kind of have to adjust the plan along the way and try to meet some key contacts in order to have, a necessary interview with the stakeholders in the field. So just getting on top of just meeting the right people wasn't such a straightforward task, and I think that's something that Alex and Hal also mentioned in their experiences. The other thing that was quite interesting for me in my experience is that I visited Kenya also during a time where there was a lot of political transition. So there were a lot of political protests and a little bit of unrest going on in certain parts of the country. And so again, it was just this idea of having a plan before going, and then once you get there, you realize that there are certain restrictions that you have to deal with and having to adjust. And so I think the biggest lesson that I learned from this experience is just realize that everything that we have on paper set up to go onto the ground and do the research, it can be scrapped. And so you have to be ready to adjust and have different ideas in place and get creative with how you're going to execute the research plan that you have. And finally, for the case of Kenya in particular, when you're conducting interviews with households, you're just a complete stranger showing up at their door asking questions. So it's not like they'll just share all of their information with you. So a lot of times those issues with trust, but we've always managed to somehow get the interview done. But there were a few cases where we would get to the household and the person would just not share the information, or we could sense that the information was not reliable. So we just kind of cut that interview short in order to move on to other people that are expecting us to visit. And of course, at the end of the interviews, leave them a little gift, put some money in their pay-as-you-go M-Pesa account, just to make a little contribution. And so these was just some good experiences that I had, some experiences that helped us to learn to be better prepared for future surveys. So that's I have so much more. I could say so much more, but I guess we're kind of short on time, so maybe just cut it short here.
Yeah, here let me include Maggie the conversation. So I'm sorry that a lot of this discussion was in Japanese, but if you have some questions, and for example, especially towards what Charles said?
Yes, I have some. Well, I caught up like little bits and pieces from the conversation. So I have some questions like going off what they were talking about. Like, what are some like comparisons of like drivers and barriers to the development of renewable energy in Southeast Asia and Africa? And like, how is Japan or other advanced countries helping developing countries with regard to the development of renewable energy?
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Gili-san, Hao-san, Charles, do you have any thoughts on?
Sure. Just to share some background knowledge. So this is the data of how different kinds of capital is flowing into developing countries in the past few decades. And as you can see, ODA is definitely one of the key components too. ODA is here.
ODA is official development assistance.
Development assistance
Mm-hmm.
is here. And it's definitely one of the important elements too. ODA through ODA, you can transfer the technology know-how and capacity development. ODA is very important too. But as you can see from the figure, FDI, foreign direct investment, is very important. FDI, in terms of amount, it has been growing and growing. And through FDI, it can come from developing countries and also developed countries both. And through FDI, advanced technologies could be installed in developing countries. So how to attract FDI is one of the keys too. And the question to why Africa is lagging is, sorry.
Maybe Charles can talk a little bit about Africa.
Yeah, I can.
Because I think in the background you need some knowledge about, like, for example, electricity access. In Southeast Asia, basically, we have quite good coverage of in terms of access to electricity. But in Africa, especially Sub-Saharan Africa, I understand the situation is different, right?
Yes, and I think one of the most important things that contributes to the development of the energy sector in Africa is to have the right institutions in place in order to make the plans necessary in order to provide the access needed. In certain countries, these institutions are more developed than others, and therefore it makes it clear that in some places there is a lack of infrastructure needed in order to make the access possible for everybody. The case of Kenya, they have the right institutions in place, and they have a lot of plans that have been set up in order to make sure that they can achieve 100% energy access in the country by 2030. I think they shortened it to 2025, but you see, they're showing a lot of ambition in enabling themselves to achieve that goal. Why is it lagging though? In the case of Africa in particular, in the case of Kenya at least, I'll speak for Kenya. A lot of people, there's a lot of things, but mainly you have the issue of affordability. You know, especially if you're talking about renewable energy can be expensive. And some people that are living, especially in remote areas where energy access is most prominent, this is where income levels are quite low. And so they're not able to afford the services that are provided by energy access provision. And so that's one barrier that the African situation has to deal with. Another aspect of another barrier that you would have to think about is also just the awareness of the consumer. It's a driver and a barrier. Some of these are drivers and barriers. So consumer awareness can be obviously a driver, because if people know about the services you have to offer and the demand is growing, and you have this need for this modern energy service, then there's a market opportunity there. And in turn, if there's a lack of awareness, like such as the case in Kenya, where you have people living in very dispersed, remote locations, it's very hard to, provide those services in those areas. I'm looking at my notes here, and yeah, those are some of the main drivers. So affordability, right? Institutions being a driver and a barrier, and consumer awareness, right? Geography in Africa is an important driver. In the Kenyan case in particular, there's you have the Great Rift Valley, which is a huge resource for geothermal energy production. Kenya also is receiving a lot of solar irradiance, so they have tremendous potential for solar power generation. And Kenya has also always been involved in producing energy via hydropower. But of course, hydropower is kind of a controversial energy source when it comes to considering it renewable or sustainable. But yes, Kenya has been looking at renewable energy sources, in particular, and their geographic blessings, endowments have made it possible for them to promote renewable energy development in their country. So yeah, just some ideas here. So geography, consumer awareness, institutions, affordability, drivers and barriers to the case of Africa and promoting renewable energy.
Okay, thank you. Hao-san, do you have any comments on these issues?
So in addition, in terms of the international or development aid, I think that what affects most is currently affects most is the international opinion of the movement towards this carbon neutral or ESG investment, and this movement is indeed changing the Japanese government's development aid towards the Southeast Asian countries. So this kind of discussions, global discussions, is one of the key issues for the actually future international development aids. Yeah,
There was a big news. I don't know whether you read in the media. The Japanese government decided to stop exporting coal power technology.
Yeah, yeah, that was in my mind. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Maggie, is that okay? Could you understand?
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you so much for participating today. I'm afraid because of time constraints, we have to wrap up now. Okay, thank you. では皆さん、本当にありがとうございます。ちょっとね、やっぱり時間の制限がありまして、この辺に終わらないといけないですけども、まあ、大変、重要な課題、ご指摘、いただいて本当にありがとうございます。で、第3章について、もちろんこの本を読まないといけないと思いますけども、まあ、少しだけ、第3章で扱われている、問題について、触れることができました。本当に、今日ありがとうございました。はい。じゃあ、これで終わります。ありがとうございます。